The Origin series, Beginnings. We all search for that elusive nugget of finding out, how did this all start? And this series is about discovering other ancient books, other Bibles that, oddly enough, predate the Bible, but yet have many of the stories that, if you grew up as a Christian, you were told. Now, other faiths have a different version, but yet it's still in the same neighborhood. And it's something that we all want to know about. So how did it begin? Well, we know this, that we have a scientific view as we've gotten wiser that has told us how planets, stars, solar systems, galaxies, how they all play a role. We understand the science of that. And what we don't fully understand, we're learning. So this is the deal. We're going to examine different books, as I said. This one, we're going to be talking about the bronze books. Now, there's been a lot of focus in on this, particularly on the Planet X thing. Now, is there a Planet X? Listen, all I know is this, that I have found a number of ancient documents that mention what they call in the Chaldean text, Nabar, which means basically wandering planet or star. That in itself says, okay, and then we get these writings, and they have an even more detailed story. But this is not our focus. These are the bronze books. Amazing how our species, particularly those that are in power, how they begin to think of themselves as gods. I mean, seriously, I could name you about 4 current politicians today that, in fact, actually do believe they are gods. And many of you probably have supported them. Scary thing. So let's talk about the Phoenicians. They are the ones, by the way, to let you know, if it was not for the Phoenicians, probably most of the religious documents that are known today would most likely not be known. These were the seafarers. They're the ones who basically tamed the oceans. Their journeys and the ports that they not only went to and made, the commerce and the trade that they brought with them was literally, you could almost say it was the tip of the spear for, I believe, collective consciousness. That's just my take. Their trade routes are infamous, and they traded in religious documents. That's what they did, along with many other things. And it was because of this, by the way, a very lucrative trade of bringing other sacred writings from other cultures. That's how we get these amalgamations of religion. Fact. This is a good book if you want to study more on the history of the Phoenicians and begin to have an appreciation of what these people brought. Because here's the deal, folks. They're the ones who brought us our alphabet. Yeah. Our modern day alphabet was because of the Phoenicians. Isn't that weird? All right, let's start reading. I think you're really going to enjoy this. We will be starting with chapter 1, Creation. Mortal knowledge is circumscribed by mortal ignorance, and mortal comprehension is circumscribed by spiritual reality. It is unwise for mortal man to attempt the understanding of that which is beyond his conception, for there lies the road to disbelief and madness. Yet man is man, and ever fated to reach out beyond himself, striving to attain things which always just elude his grasp. So in his frustration, he replaces the dimly seen incomprehensible with the things within his understanding. If these things but poorly reflect reality, then is it not the reflection of reality, distorted though it may be, of greater value than no reflection at all? Commentary. You stop and think about this. We live in a distorted reality, folks. I can prove this to you. Whether you want to look at this through theological, philosophy, science, it's true. We continue. There are no true beginnings on earth, for here all is effect, the ultimate cause being elsewhere. For who among men can say which came first, the seed or the plant? Yet in truth it is neither. For something neither seed nor plant preceded both. And that thing was also preceded by something else. Always there are ancestors back to the beginning. And back beyond that, there is only God. This, then, is how these things were told in the great book of the sons of fire. Before the beginning, there was only one consciousness, that of the Eternal One, whose nature cannot be expressed in words. It was the one sole Spirit, the self-generator, which cannot diminish, the unknown, unknowable One, brooding solitarily in profound, pregnant silence. The name which is uttered cannot be that of this great being who, remaining nameless, is the beginning and the end, beyond time, beyond the reach of mortals, and we in our simplicity call it God. He who preceded all existed alone, in his strange abode of uncreated light, which remains ever unextinguishable, and no understandable eye can ever behold it. The pulsating draughts of the eternal life light in his keeping were not yet loosed. He knew himself alone. He was uncontrasted, unable to manifest in nothingness. For all within his being was unexpressed potential. The great circles of eternity were yet to be spun out, to be thrown forth as the endless age of existence in substance. They were to begin with God and return to him completed in infinite variety and expression. Earth was not yet in existence. There were no winds with the sky above them. High mountains were not raised, nor was the great river in its place. All was formless, without movement, calm, silent, void, and dark. No name had been named, and no destinies foreshadowed. Eternal rest is intolerable. An unmanifested potential is frustration. In the solitude of timelessness came divine loneliness, and from this arose the desire to create, that he might know and express himself, and this generated the love of God. He took thought and brought into being within himself the universal womb of creation, containing the everlasting essence of slumbering spirit. The essence was quickened by a ripple from the mind of God, and a creative thought was projected. This generated power, which produced light, and this formed a substance like unto a mist of invisible dust. It divided into two forms of energy, through being impregnated with the Spirit of God and quickening the chaos of the void within the universal womb, became spun out into whirlpools of substance. From this activity, as sparks from a fire, came an infinite variety of spirit minds, each having creative powers within itself. The activating word was spoken. Its echoes vibrate still, and there was a stirring movement which caused instability. A command was given, and this became the everlasting law. Henceforth, activity was controlled in harmonious rhythm, and the initial inertia was overcome. The laws divided the materializing chaos from God and then established the boundaries of the eternal spheres. Time no longer slept on the bosom of God, for now there was change where before all had been unchanging, and change is time. Now within the universal womb was heat, substance, and life, and encompassing it was the Word, which was the law. The command was given, let the smallest of things from the greatest, and that which lives but a flash, form everlastingness. Thus the universe came into being as a condensation of God's thought, and as it did so, it obscured him from all enclosed within his solidifying creation. Henceforth, God was hidden, for he has always remained dimly reflected in his creation. He became veiled from all that came forth from him. Creation does not explain itself. Under the law, it cannot do so. Its secrets have been unraveled by the created. All things are by nature finite. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. An unaccomplishable purpose would be eternal frustration, and therefore, the universe being created purposefully, it must have an objective. If it ended without anything else following, then the God existing must slumber indifferent to its activities. But he has made it a living work of greatness operating under the changeless law. The creating word had been spoken. Now there was another command, and the power going forth smote the sun, so its face was lit, and it shone with great radiance, pouring warmth and light upon its sister earth. Henceforth she would live within the protection of her brother's household, rejoicing in the benevolence and strength. The waters upon the bosom of the earth were gathered together, and dry land appeared. When the covering of water was rolled back, the body of earth was unstable, damp, and yielding. The face of the sun was shone down kindly upon his sister, and the dry land of her body became very hard. Humidity and dampness were taken away. He gave her a garment of fleece and a veil of fine linen, that she might clothe her body with modesty. From the great womb had sprung the spirit of life, and it was rampant in the heavens. It gazed upon the earth and saw her fairness, was filled with desire, and came out of the heavenly spaces to possess her. It came not peacefully as a lover, but tempestuously as a ravager. Its breath howled along her corridors and raged among her mountaintops. But it did not discover the dwelling place of her spirit. She had withdrawn, as a woman withdraws before force. For modesty must not be outraged in submission. Yet she desired its embrace. For among all radiant company she was honored. The sun saw her perplexity, and he wrestled with the spirit of life and overcame it. When it was subdued and the primal struggle had ceased, it was delivered by the sun to his sister. It was chastened and quietened, and in silence brooded over earth's water. She was stirred in response. Mud eggs of life, potential, were formed in swamps. At the meeting places of land and the two waters, the sun gave quickening heat, and life crawled forth upon the bosom of the earth. The land dust brought forth the male, and the dark water, mist, and the female. And they united and multiplied. The first brought forth the second, and the two produced the third. Earth was no longer virgin, and the spirit of life grew old and departed. Earth was left garbed in the matron's mantle of green herbage, coverage the face of the land. The waters brought forth fishes and creatures, which moved about and twisted themselves and wiggled in the waters. The serpents and the beasts of terrible aspects, which were of yore, and reptiles which creep and crawl. They were tall walking things, and dragons in hideous forms clothed with terror, whose great bones may still be seen. Then came forth from the womb of the earth all the beasts of the field and the forest, and the creatures of creation having blood in their bodies, and it was complete. Beasts roamed the dry land, and fishes swarmed in the seas. The birds were in the skies, and worms within the soil. There were great land masses, and high mountains, wide, barren places, and heaving waters. Fertile greenness covered the land, and abundant life swarmed in the seas. For now earth throbbed with the energy of life. Meadows lay hidden in her rocks, and precious stones within the soil. Gold and silver were scattered and secreted. There were copper for tools, and forest for timber. There were swamps for reed, and stones for every purpose. Everything was prepared. Everything was ready. And now earth awaited the coming of man. Chapter 2. The birth of man. The love of God penetrated the third veil and became the seed of souls within the soul seed, the body of man. God made of water and the things of the earth, breathing into him the spirit of life, that he might live. But man, when young, lived only to eat and to drink and to fornicate. For being conscious only of the earth, he knew only earthly things and earthly ways. Now the Spirit of God moved over the face of the earth, but was not of the earth. It held all things and was in all things. But earth could not be apart from anything. Without substance, it was awake, but entering substance, it slept. Consider that which was told by the servants of Eban, the heaven man, who once wandered the earth. He had no earthly substance and could not grasp its fruits, for he had no hands. He could not drink its waters, for he had no mouth, nor could he feel the cool wind upon his skin. They tell how the ape tried Sheloch, led by heaven man, perished by flames before the valley of Lord. Only one she-ape reaching the cave heights above. When heaven man was reborn of the she-ape in the cavern of woe, could he taste the fruits of the earth, and drink of her waters, and feel the coolness of her winds? Did he not find life good? Is it not all a tale of the courtyard? Man, created from earthly substance alone, could not know things not of earth, nor could spirit alone subdue him. Had man not been created, who would have known God's wisdom and power? As the spirit feels the body of man, so does God feel his creation. Therefore, it was that God saw something had to be which joined earth and spirit and was both. In his wisdom, and by the creative impulse which governs the earth, he prepared a body for a man. For the body of man is wholly of earth. Behold, the great day came when the Spirit, which is God, was joined with the beast, which is the earth. Then earth withered in the labor of travail. Her mountains rocked back and forth, and her seas heaved up and down. Earth groaned in her lands, and shrieked in her winds. She cried in the rivers, and wept in her storms. So man was born of upheaval and strife. He came wretchedly and tumultuously, the offspring of a distraught earth. All was in discord. Snow fell in hot wastelands. Ice covered the fertile plains. The forests became seas. Where once it was hot, now it was cold. And where no rain had ever fallen, now there were floods. So man came forth, man the child of calamity, man the inheritor of creative struggle, man the battleground of extremes. Earth nurtured man with cautious affection, weaning him in the recesses of her body. Then, when he was grown sufficiently to be lifted so he could walk in uprightness of a God, she took him and raised him above all other creatures. She led him even into the presence of God, and she laid him on his great altar. A man imperfect, of earthly limitations, a thing unfinished, ungainly, and unlearned. But proudly was he presented to earth's creator. Not her firstborn was man, the son of earth, the grandchild of God, man the heir of tribulation and the pupil of affliction. God saw man, the offering of earth to her Lord, unconscious on the high altar, a sacrifice to him, and a dedication to the spirit of fate. Then from out of the unfathomable heights, and from behind the impenetrable veil, God came down above the altar, and he breathed into man the breath of eternal life. Into his sleeping body, God implanted a fragment of himself, the seed of a soul, and the spark of divinity. And man, the mortal, became man, the heir of God, and the inheritor of immortality. Henceforth, he would have dominion over God's earthly estate, but he also had to unravel the circles of eternity, and his destiny was to be an everlasting seeking and striving. Man slept, but God opened the great eye within him, and man saw a vision of unsurpassed glory. He heard the voice of God saying, "O man, in your hand is now placed the tablet of your inheritance, and my seal is upon it. Know that all you desire within your heart may be yours. But first it is necessary that you be taught its value. Behold, the earth is filled with things of usefulness. They are prepared for your hand, for a purpose. But the task is upon you to seek them out and learn their use. This is the tuition for the management of your inheritance. What you know to be good, seek for, and it shall be found. You may plumb the seas and pluck the stars. You may live in everlasting glory and savor eternal delights. Above and below and all about, there is nothing beyond your reach. All, with one exception, is yours to obtain." Then God laid his hand upon man, saying, "Now you are even as I, except you sleep there enclosed in matter, in the kingdom of illusion, while I dwell here in the freedom of reality and truth. It is not for me to come down to you, but for you to reach out for me. Our unborn friends, whatever your circumstances of life, you are the children of the past and heirs of those who have lived and died. We trust you have no cause to reproach those who once held stewardship over your estate. But whatever you think of the heritage, you cannot put it aside any more than you can refuse that man then saw a vision of glory encompassing even the spheres of splendor. Unbounded wisdom filled his heart, and he beheld beauty and perfection. The ultimates of truth and justice were unveiled before him. He became one with the profound peace of eternity and knew the joys of unceasing gladness. The eternal ages of time unrolled as a scroll before his eyes, and he saw written thereon all that was to become and occur. The great vaults of heaven were opened up unto him, and he saw the everlasting fires, the unconsumable powers that strove therein. He felt within himself the stirring of inexpressible love. The ultimate designs of grandeur filled his thoughts. His spirit raged unhampered through all the spheres of existence. He was then even as God himself, and he knew the secret of the 7 spheres within the 3 spheres. Then God lifted his hand from man, and man was alone. The great vision departed, and he awoke only a dim and elusive recollection. No more than a shadow of a dream remained. But deep within the sleeping soul there was a spark of remembrance, and it generated within the man a restless longing, for he knew not what. Henceforth man was destined to wander discontented, seeking something he felt, he knew, but could not see, something which continually eluded him, perpetually goaded him, and forever tantalized him. Deep within himself, man knew something greater than himself was always within him and part of him, spurring him on to greater deeds, greater thoughts, greater aspirations. It was something out beyond himself, scarcely realized and never found. Something which told him that the radiant scene on the horizon but dimly reflected the hidden glory beyond it. Man awoke, the revelation and vision gone. Only the grim reality of earth's untamed vastness surrounded him. But when he arose and stepped down into the bosom of his Mother Earth, he was undaunted by the great powers that beset him or by the magnitude of the task at hand. Within his heart, he knew destiny lay beyond the squalor of his environment. He stepped out nobly, gladly accepting the challenge. He was now a new man. He was different. He looked above and saw glory in the heavens. He saw beauty about him, and he knew goodness in things not of the earth. The vision of eternal values arose before his inner eye. His spirit was responding to its environment. Man was now man, truly man. The nature of man on earth was formed after the nature of things in heaven, and man had all things contained as potential within himself, except divine life. He was as yet an untrained, undisciplined child, still nurtured simply upon the comforting bosoms of the earth. Man grew in stature, but earth was not indulgent, for she disciplined him firmly. She was ever strict and unyielding, chastening him often with blasts of displeasure. It was indeed the upbringing of one destined for greatness. He was made to suffer gold, and that he might learn to clothe himself, sent into the barren places, that his limbs should be strengthened, into the forest, that his eye should become keen and his heart strong. He was perplexed with difficult problems and set the task of unraveling the illusion of nature. He was beset with hardships of every description. He was tested with frustrations and tempted with allurements. Never did earth relax its vigilance of her supervision. The child was raised sternly, for he needed the fortitude, the courage, and the cunning of a man to fit him for the task ahead. He grew wily and wily in the hunt. He became adaptable, able to cope with any untoward happenings. Overcoming the bewilderments of early days, he found explanations for the perplexities of his surroundings. Yet the struggle for knowledge, the need for adaptation, and the effort to survive were never relaxed. The earth child was well trained and disciplined. He was never unduly mollycoddled. He cried for bread and went hungry. He shivered and was cast out. He was sick and driven into the forest. Weary, he was lashed with storms. Thirsty, he found the waters dried. When weak, his burden was increased. And in the midst of rejoicing, he was struck down with sorrow. In moments of weakness, he cried, "Enough!" and doubted his destiny. But always something fortified and encouraged him. The earthling never fortified his God-likeness. For man was man. He was not cowed, nor his spirit broken. A wise God knew his limitations. As it is written in the wisdom of men, over-chastisement is as bad as no chastisement at all. But man was rarely chastised. He was tried, tested, and challenged. He was led, prodded, and urged. Yet nothing was done unnecessarily. The seeming imperfections of earth, the hazards, the inequalities of life, the cruelty, the harshness, the apparent indifference to suffering and affliction were not what they seemed. As it is, earth is perfect for its purpose. It is ignorance for that purpose which makes it appear imperfect. Where is there a wiser Father than the Spirit of God, or a better mother than earth? What man is now, he owes to these. May he learn to be duly grateful. Above all, let him never forget the lessons of his upbringing. We're going to stop right there, and we will continue reading from the Bronze Book. I want to stop right here and just kind of review what these first two chapters really said. As you can see, the parallels of the creation story as we're reading in the Chaldean account, the Akkadian record, as we've seen in the verdict, as we've seen in the Quran, as we've seen in the Bible, all cultures seem to have the same type of story. Now, there's variations of the theme. But you can see now, as you have followed me on these series, that there's something going on here, folks. And the stories that we're reading, we can now see those as almost being, let's say, a pole reversal. We can see it reacting to the sun. And let there be no doubt, there is, as these scribes wrote, how do you call God? I mean, that is such a word now used to cover everything, right? He says you can't name it. The best you could say, it's the singleness of the consciousness. All right, folks, I hope you're enjoying this. We will continue this. Be kind to one another.